Hello, literates. I'm Britt Ryderly, and welcome back to Writer's Ambition. For those of you who have been with us since the first episode, you're a real one. And for those of you who are just finding my humble channel, welcome. We hope you stay a while. First, the swag. This is a Slight Black Women's hoodie. Slight Black Women's campaign was started in 2017 and is still continuing. And all the proceeds go to support the Winnie Mandela School of Knowledge Formation and Political Consciousness. Winnie Mandela was a South African anti-apartheid political activist. She served as a member of parliament from 1994 to 2003, and then again in 2009 to 2018 when she died. She also served as the deputy minister of arts and from 1994 to 1996. So super worthy cause. I'll link the description to the website and I'll link the website in the description, and you should definitely check it out. Get some comfy swag. So let's just hop right in because these episodes are truly sized. So today we are talking about ableism and the genres and continuing our series on facts and factors of literature in the genre. So we're going to talk about ability. In the spirit of citing Black women, I just want to focus our conversation on the literature of one author. Her name is Talia Hibbert. She's a Black British contemporary romance and paranormal romance author, and she has multiple books, but she has 3 books in particular that I want to focus on. So let's go. The first 2 books are called A Girl Like Her and Untouchable, and these are in the Ravenswood series. So A Girl Like Her is about Ruth Kabah, who is the younger sister to Hannah Kabah. She's the protagonist of the second book, Untouchable. So Ruth is a super recluse who loves comics and writes her own paranormal romance comic that she uploads online. That's how she makes her living. So Ruth has Asperger's syndrome. I've never read a contemporary romance book with a protagonist who is neurodivergent in any way. And so reading A Girl Like Her was really interesting, not because like Ruth is different, but because she's not. I mean, not to me. I found her very familiar and very relatable. Maybe it's because I'm a Nako Taco too, but I found her really relatable. But what was interesting was that even when there were moments of similarity where it's like, oh, I'm awkward too, the way that Ruth would think about how she moved through the world was different. So it wasn't just like, I'm a Nako Taco. It was whenever Evan, who's the love interest, who is her new neighbor, whenever Evan comes by without announcing himself, whenever he comes by suddenly, I don't have the chance to plan out conversations the way I prefer to. Otherwise I'll say something weird and people will get uncomfortable. Like the way that she thinks about herself in the world, it's just interesting to read a character who is so conscious of how they move in the world and relate to other people. And I think that Talia Hibbert does a super wonderful job of making Ruth relatable, but also showing the ways that her mind does work differently. So I love it. The second book is called Untouchable. It's actually about Ruth's older sister. His name is Hannah. Hannah is a certified child caretaker. That's what her degree is in. She's really good at it. And she has depression. So what I really like about this book is like there's no depressive episode. There's not this spectacular display of depression via Hannah having like this major breakdown or whatever. Like that doesn't happen, and I really appreciate not making a spectacle of Black women's pain. So I super appreciate Talia Hibbert for that. What I really love is that the way that the depression comes up is in conversation, and not like casual conversation, but like, here's how I move through the world and here's how I process the things that happen to me. Here's how I'm in conversation with my body. Here's how I track the way that I think and I take responsibility for myself. And if you're going to be in relation to me, here's things that you need to know. Like the way that Hannah thinks about her depression and talks about her depression is very responsible, and I really love that. Because I mean, even when I see representation of depression like on TV, it seems as if the people are always super out of control and it's always very dramatic, and this is not the case here. It's very much like a lived with thing, not something that completely disrupts her life. She does talk about it as something that can be really, really disruptive, but it isn't made some spectacle of, as if it's like for the purpose of being seen by the reader. And I really appreciate the respect that Talia Hibbert represents Hannah with. So moving to the third and final book by Talia Hibbert that I really, really love. It's in a separate series called The Brown Sisters, and it's called Get a Life, Chloe Brown. So Get a Life, Chloe Brown is about Chloe Brown, who decides that she needs to get a life because she has a near-death experience where she almost gets hit by a car while she's taking a daily walk. Chloe is the first character that I have come across in contemporary romance or any genre where the protagonist is dealing with chronic pain. She has fibromyalgia. And I've never seen that in contemporary romance, especially because like that's not romantic, but she does have it. She does move through the world with it, and it's a really personal representation for Talia Hibbert because she also deals with chronic pain. And so you really see how deeply Talia Hibbert thinks about it, because she gets into things like believing Black women when they say they're in pain. There's a part at the beginning of the novel where Chloe is talking about or reflecting about, well, actually it's really not at the beginning, it's sort of middle beginning, where she's talking about and reflecting about when she first developed or she first sort of started getting fibromyalgia and how the doctors didn't believe her. Now, she's a grown woman when she got fibromyalgia. The doctor didn't believe her. Her father had to come in and say, no, really, she's been fainting. She's been sick. Like ever since she got pneumonia, her body just hasn't been the same. Where a paternal figure has to come in and convince a medical authority that a Black woman knows what her body is doing and that something is wrong. And so I think that sort of like just nuance, just consideration for the plot. It wasn't some like huge thing, but it was just a reflection that I think is really important to say and to talk about, is the way that Black women's pain goes under-regarded or completely disbelieved. And I really appreciate Talia Hibbert doing this sort of like full-throated representation and conversation around chronic pain through the conversations that the protagonist Chloe has with her property manager and neighbor Redford Morgan. And Red was also a sort of character that I have not never seen, but I appreciated. It was refreshing because I haven't necessarily seen it in men. So it's not this big plot point in the way that like it's super explicit, but Red has PTSD from a past relationship where his girlfriend was psychologically and physically abusive to him. And I've not really seen male characters talk about mental illness, particularly mental illness that's the result of abuse and not something like war or an attack or something like that, like some big spectacular, the police were called attack. And so I really, really love how the PTSD comes up. It's not spectacular either. It's just in the way that like when he responds to Chloe in a certain way, she's like, Red, I think I'm sorry, I think I triggered you. Like that sort of interpersonal responsibility to each other, that he helps her and is considerate of helping her have the adventures that she wants to have in the body that she's in, and she's considerate of moving through this relationship in respect to her own romantic past and in respect to the PTSD that he has because of his romantic past. And they're both very considerate and responsible and communicative of each other in that way. And I just love the maturity of it all and the willingness to learn and develop. So those are my reflections on ability and contemporary romance via Talia Hibbert. I super, super recommend her. She is very, very amazing. So please check her out. If you have favorites by her, drop it in the comments. If you have other books that you think do ability really well in the genres, drop it in the comments. I'd love to read it.